Hey there guys, this is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. Today we are continuing on the Superman series of movie reviews. So, since we have a brand new Superman movie in theaters directed by James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I figured before I review that movie, why not tackle the previous Superman movies? And I already reviewed the first four Christopher Reeve Superman movies from like the 1970s and 80s, so you can check out those reviews. And I already reviewed the 2006 movie, Superman Returns. When it comes to my thoughts on the previous movies, I love the first two Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I think they're some of the greatest superhero movies of all time. I like the third one for what it is, despite its flaws, although I can understand why people would not like it. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, on the other hand, though, not so much, because Superman 4, The Quest for Peace is one of the worst comic book movies of all time, as everyone says, and I 100% agree with that. And Superman Returns, I didn't hate the movie, but I thought Superman Returns was honestly a very mediocre, dull movie, so... And that movie came out in 2006, so like about 19 years after Superman 4. But because the reception for that movie was so lackluster, it took us 7 years before we finally got this movie. Man of Steel from 2013, which I do enjoy this movie. Now, it's not perfect. It has its problems, and I know that this is a very divisive movie. It's very much a love it or hate it type of movie, but I personally really like this movie. Now, do I think it's the best Superman movie ever? No. I would put the first two Christopher Reeve Superman movies above it, and even the new 2025 Superman movie, but I honestly still like this movie, for reasons I'm going to discuss throughout this review. And like I said, if you guys have been following my previous reviews, you would know that I am a rather big fan of the character Superman. In fact, I'm not going to pull them off my shelves, but over there, I got a decent amount of Superman comics over there. You know, I've always liked the character, you know, whether it would be the first three Christopher Reeve movies, Superman the Animated Series from the 1990s, the Justice League Unlimited cartoon from the 2000s, this movie, and the brand new Superman movie. You know, I've always liked the character. Now, I don't like all the movies, but I gotta be honest, I personally think most of the Superman movies are good, minus the exception of a few bad eggs, but, you know, you'll find that out when I do my ranking of the Superman movies, because now, I know what people are gonna say. Well, are you gonna review Batman vs. Superman? At some point, yes, but honestly, I'm probably just gonna hold off on reviewing that movie just because I just don't, you know, at the moment, I just don't have the time to review it right now. And also, I view Batman vs. Superman more as a Batman movie anyway, so I'm thinking about saving that for like a Batman review series sometime down the road. But for now, we're just gonna focus on these solo-led Superman movies. When it comes to the reception of the previous Superman movies, Superman the movie from 1978 and Superman 2 were very well-received movies by critics and audiences and smash box office hits, but the third one and the fourth one received negative reviews, and then Superman Returns received mixed reviews. Now, Man of Steel, this movie did receive positive reviews from audiences, but the movie, now, when this movie came out, when Man of Steel came out, it received mixed reviews from critics, but positive reviews from audience members, and I personally like this movie, you know. Now, again, it's not perfect, it has its problems, but I rather enjoy it, and this movie was directed by Zack Snyder, who, prior to this, he had directed movies like the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake, which I think is honestly one of the better horror movie remakes. He directed the movie 300, which I think is a pretty good movie about Spartans. I also enjoy, I also enjoy that 2010 animated movie he did, Legend of the Guardians, Owls of the Cool. It has been a while since I watched that movie, but I do remember liking it, and I even don't mind Watchmen. Now, I know Zack Snyder's a very divisive director. He's a very much love or hated director. Honestly, I like most of his movies, minus the exception of a couple. I mean, really the only Zack Snyder movies the only Zack Snyder movies that I am not a fan of at all is Batman vs Superman and Sucker Punch. But I know for most people, most people would say either 300 or the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake is the best Zack Snyder movie, which they are some of his better movies, but I would honestly say this is my favorite Zack Snyder movie. But yeah. So anyways, what is the plot to the 2013 movie Man of Steel? So the plot synopsis of this movie is as follows. A young boy, Clark Kent, learns that he has extraordinary powers and is not a part of this earth. As a young man, he journeys to discover where he came from and what he was sent here to do. But the hero in him must emerge if he is to save the world from annihilation and become the symbol of hope for all mankind. So that's basically the plot synopsis to this movie. And one thing I gotta give props to, this movie, this movie's got a really good cast to it. You got Henry Cavill as Clark Kent / Superman. You got Amy Adams as Lois Lane. You got Michael Shannon as General Zod. You got Russell Crowe as Jor-El, who, Russell Crowe, I think, is an amazing actor. I mean, Russell Crowe, he starred in the 2000 Swords and Sandals movie, Gladiator, which I absolutely love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time, so it's nice to see him in here. You also got Jonathan Kent, played by Kevin Costner, who, again, Kevin Costner is another actor who I do rather like, whether it would be this movie or, Dances with Wolves, The Bodyguard with him and Whitney Houston, and Mr. Brooks. I've always liked Kevin Costner as an actor. And you got Perry White, played by Lawrence Fishburne, another guy who I've always liked as an actor, whether it be the John Wick movies or him as Morpheus in The Matrix, the first 3 movies. And you got Angie Trau, I think that's how you say the actress's name, who plays the character Flora. So yeah, this movie's overall got a really good cast. And you also got Diane Lane in here too as Superman's Earth mom who raised him. So that's pretty cool. But without further ado, let's get into my review of Man of Steel. So the movie starts off where we are introduced to planet Krypton, where we are introduced to Jor-El, Superman's dad, played by Russell Crowe, and we're also introduced to Superman's mother, who, gives birth to the baby Clark Kent. And and long story short, the planet is about to explode, so Jor-El and his wife, they basically put the baby, or aka Clark Kent, inside of the space shuttle, and they basically launch him off the planet before it explodes, very much like the 1978 Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. But this time, the villain of this movie is General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, and I personally thought that Michael Shannon was a very good General Zod. Now, I do not think he is quite as good as Terrence Stamp in the second Christopher Reeve Superman. I don't think he's quite as good as Terrence Stamp in the 1981 superhero movie Superman 2 starring Christopher Reeve. I don't think he's quite as good as that actor who portrayed General Zod, but I still think that Michael Shannon is rather good in this movie, and he definitely brings the character to life. And I gotta admit, I thought that this version of General Zod, he was an intimidating villain, and I like the part where General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, says, General Zod says, "Your son is not safe. He says, your son is not safe. I will find him." And he's yelling, "I will find him." He is yelling at the top of his lungs, "I will find your son." Like this guy's not messing around. And you definitely feel intimidated because, yeah, General Zod is not the type of guy you want to mess with. And then not long after that, Clark Kent, aka Superman, as a baby, he lands on planet Earth, and then we are introduced to his parents, who is Jonathan Kent, his dad, who in this movie is played by Kevin Costner. And then, we're also introduced to his wife in the movie, who, of course, they raised the baby as their own son, Clark Kent. And the action scenes in this movie are very well directed by Zack Snyder. Say what you will about him as like a storyteller, because again, he's a very love or hate type of director, but he definitely knows how to direct some really good action scenes. And I think that the action scenes in this movie are very well done. Even the action scenes that have shaky camera, I think are really well done, to be honest. And I like the part when early on in this movie, we're introduced to Clark Kent, who is now a teenager, and he is basically on a school bus with all of his friends. They're on a field trip, but the bus accidentally falls off a bridge. It falls into some water. The kids on the bus are drowning, but then Clark Kent, and this is before he gets his Superman suit and is before he is Superman. This is like way in the past. He decides to make a bold move where he decides he's going to show the kids his powers, where Clark Kent is basically going to pull the bus out the water and put it on land to bring the kids to safety. And it definitely creates some good conflict because, not long after that, later that day, when Clark Kent gets home, basically one of the kids who was on the school bus, that kid's mother is talking to Jonathan Kent, and she says, "My boy saw what your kid did. Like, he lifted the bus out the water. That's not natural," and stuff like that. And again, I thought that Kevin Costner, now granted, I don't think he's as good as, the actor who played Jonathan Kent in the 1978 Superman movie, but I still thought that Kevin Costner was rather good in this movie as Jonathan Kent, and I thought that now he doesn't have as big of, he's not the main character of the movie, but I thought that Jonathan Kent, played by Kevin Costner, I thought he had rather good chemistry with Clark Kent, the actor who played him as an adult, which is Henry Cavill, and the teenage version. I thought that his dynamic was really good, and I like the part where Clark Kent is talking to his dad, and his dad, played by Kevin Costner, basically tells him, he says, "Clark, you cannot do this in front of public." And then I like the part where they're having this conversation, and Clark Kent says, "What was I supposed to do? Let the kids die?" And then, the dad, Jonathan Kent, says, "I don't know, maybe." And Jonathan Kent says, "Maybe you should have let those kids die because the world is not ready for you yet and your powers. Like, the world would be freaked out if they knew you had powers." And I think that that's really deep. I think that's really deep storytelling, and it really puts the weight on the character's shoulders. I thought that was a rather nice scene of the movie. There's also some other good action scenes in the movie too. And the music in this movie is really good too. The music in this movie was done by Hans Zimmer, who, if you're not familiar with that, a music artist, he did the music to the 1988 action movie Die Hard, which Die Hard is one of my favorite movies of all time. So it's cool that the composer of that movie's music did the music to this movie. I thought that was rather cool. And I like how this movie is an origin story, I like how we get to see the character throughout his life, and there's a part where early on in the movie, we cut to Superman, who is now an adult, but aka Clark Kent, where he's basically on a fishing boat, but then him and a few people, they go on like this giant platform, but the platform is about to collapse, and then he decides to rescue the people on that platform, but then he walks through fire, but because he has superpowers, he doesn't feel it, and everyone's looking at him like, what? But then Clark Kent is able to rescue the people, but then the tower that he's on top of, part of it is about to collapse and fall on top of a helicopter, and the place is on fire, but Superman, played by Henry Cavill, is able to stop it, and the helicopter is able to fly away to safety and stuff like that. I thought that was a rather good action scene. And I thought that Amy Adams was a rather good Lois Lane. And now, granted, like I said, this movie is not... Now, this movie, it it is not as good as the 1978 movie Superman the Movie, or even Superman 2, or even the new 2025 Superman movie. But I will say, in my opinion, Amy Adams is the best on-screen. In my opinion, Amy Adams, she is the best on-screen actress to play Lois Lane. Now, granted, like I said, this is not the best Superman movie. There are Superman movies that I think are better than this, like the first two Christopher Reeve movies and even the new Superman 2025 movie. But I do think Amy Adams overall is the best actress to portray Lois Lane. And again, I rather like Amy Adams as an actress, whether it would be this movie, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, one of my favorite comedy movies with Will Ferrell, the 2016 sci-fi movie Arrival. I really like Amy Adams as an actress, and honestly, she is one of those actresses that even if she's in a bad movie, she is always good in it. Like, I have never seen this actress give a bad performance, even in a bad movie, and I think that she's definitely one of the best aspects about this movie. And throughout the course of the movie, the government, the U.S. government is not sure. Is Superman on our side, or is he a bad guy? Like, the military is not sure about it because you have these other bad guys going around, like General Zod and Fiora, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Like, you have bad guys like that going around who have the same powers as Superman, but the government doesn't know if Superman is on their side or if he's with the bad guys. And I think that creates really good conflict in the movie. And there's a part when later on in the movie, General Zod basically threatens to, General Zod, he basically presents a message on Earth through the TV, and General Zod basically says, Superman has 24 hours to turn himself in, or I will destroy this planet. And Superman has to decide, is he going to turn himself in, or is he not going to and have to fight General Zod? I think that honestly creates some really good conflict with the movie. And again, I think that the action scenes are rather good in this movie. Like, for example, when General Zod threatens to kill Superman's mom on Earth, and Superman is upset about this. He flies at General Zod. He slams his body in a cornfield, destroying it. And he says, how dare you threaten my mother and stuff like this. And, okay, this is a complaint about this movie that I honestly do not understand. A lot of people complain about the destruction scenes in this movie. And honestly, again, I get opinion in film is subjective, but I honestly don't understand why people have a problem with these destruction scenes, because, be honest, if two super being gods like this were on our Earth fighting, what do you think would happen? Buildings would get destroyed, people would die, stuff would blow up. Like, stuff like that would happen. I'm sorry. Now, do not get me wrong. The 2021 the 2021 animated adult superhero TV show Invincible on Prime Video, I really like that TV show. Yet, here's the thing. With that TV show, nobody complains about the destruction in that movie because, again, if you have two super being gods fighting on Earth, what is going to happen? If this were to happen in real life, buildings would get destroyed, people would get thrown around, explosions would happen. So for that reason alone, I've never understood this complaint with this movie. I really don't. And again, I do rather like the action scenes in this movie where Ursa, Fora, I think that's how you pronounce her name, one of General Zod's henchmen. I like the scene where she is fighting Superman, but she basically throws Superman across the city and Superman falls into an IHOP restaurant. And then she throws Superman around again, and then her and Superman are going at it. And then near the end of the movie, General Zod threatens to kill a family, and General Zod is basically trying to shoot his laser eyes at a family, but Superman is yelling at General Zod, please stop. He says to General Zod, please stop. Do not do this. I do not want to hurt you, but General Zod says he is never going to stop. So because of it, Superman has no choice. He has to kill the bad guy by snapping his neck in order to save a family. And that's another thing people complain about. And to be honest, I do not understand this complaint, because some people are like, oh, Superman would never kill bad guys. I'm like, that's stupid. That is a BS complaint, because guess what? I have actually read a couple of Superman comics where he's had to kill bad guys before. So don't give me the whole excuse of, oh, he would never do that. And besides, Superman absolutely, he had no choice whatsoever, because General Zod was not going to stop. So Superman had no choice. He had to do it. And some people will be like, oh, but Superman could just fly in front of General Zod and block his laser vision. And I'm like, okay, but like, what would he do after that? You know, like, he didn't have a choice. Like, you know, again, Superman even said that Superman said he never wanted to kill anyone. He never did, but he had no choice. He had to do it in order to save a family. And to even prove that, there's a scene where after he snaps General Zod's neck, Superman is screaming at the top of his lungs with tears in his eyes because he's upset at the fact that he had to do that. But he had to do it in order to save one of the families that General Zod was threatening to go after. And I think that creates some rather good conflict with the movie. And then at the end of the movie, General Zod, he's talking to the U.S. military leader, and again, the U.S. military is still not 100% sure if Superman's on their side, but again, there is some rather good action scenes in this movie. I like the scene where Superman is fighting Flora, the girl who, the Kryptonian girl. I thought that was a rather good action scene, and I like the scene where one of General Zod's henchmen basically throws a truck at a helicopter and one of the military guys is falling out, but Superman goes to rescue that guy. I thought that was a rather well done scene. And then I like the part at the end of the movie where Superman basically says to the general, just to convince the U.S. government that I'm on their side, and then he flies away. And then I like the part where the military general was looking at one of his comrades, a girl smiling, and he says, "What are you smiling at?" She's like, "Nothing, sir. I just think he's kind of hot." And he's like, "Get in the car." I thought that scene was pretty funny. And then the movie ends where it teases Clark Kent is going to be working at the Daily Planet with Lois Lane. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think that this is a really good movie. Again, it's not perfect, you know. I guess if I only have one issue with this movie, the sequel bait ending is disappointing because, unfortunately, after this movie, they did Batman vs. Superman, which I am not a fan of that movie at all. I think that that's a terrible movie and a significant drop in quality from this movie. And also, it just sucks that Henry Cavill never had the chance to star in a proper standalone sequel to Man of Steel, a solo movie. Like, it's a shame we did not get Man of Steel 2, but like an actual standalone sequel with Superman as the title character. In fact, Henry Cavill is even Henry Cavill is severely disappointed in that. But sadly, we're just never gonna get it. But oh well, it is what it is, and you know, sadly, we just have to move on from it. But hey, on the positive side, at least we did get Superman 2025 directed by James Gunn, and that was a rather good movie. And I'm excited for the future of that new Superman. So yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Man of Steel a 9 out of 10. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching my review. And next up, I will be taking a look at the 2025 Superman movie directed by James Gunn. But until then, we'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.